It is my privilege to introduce to you guys two speakers who you already know because they've been hanging out with you guys the entire week that you've been here.
Really?
It's going to be two of them. I just said Alvin and Krissel. Long and hard with you guys as counselors and have been a tremendous help to BAAYF as a staff and as to me as they're from SMCC, so they've helped out with us a lot. But you're going to want to pay attention because they have some very powerful stories to tell you about how God has loved them throughout their lives. And I hope that what they say can resonate with you guys. So I really want you guys to pay attention, to listen, to learn, and most importantly to hear God through their message. So without further ado, I'll invite Alvin up first.
Okay.
Anyways, that's how are you? Should I go there? Yes! No, it's so far from you guys. How about those quality games by Josh, huh? Yeah. I like that. I didn't really that. What?
Who wants lower lights?
Anyway, so this is unspoken rule about public speaking. That's don't tell people that you're underprepared. So I'm just going to do that here. For a good reason, I feel. I'm going to do that because I want to say that the time that was taken away from me writing this, sharing, was time spent experiencing God in my heart. And this time, it's a little harder for me to share because it doesn't feel like he's penciling in it. It feels like it's hurt a lot more like a tattoo, if you get what I'm saying. And sometimes there's pain, and sometimes there's blood, and sometimes there's a lot of tears. Before even your eyes can begin to see that design that he's had in mind before you started drawing it. And so the last time I opened up and shared a little bit about my walk and what that meant for me as a believer, because I know in this room, there's a lot of doubt in this room tonight. And so much of that is where I came from, you know? And the only thing I hope tonight is just for an open heart on your side. And how many of you guys went to the Fog last summer? Did you like it? Yeah. That's good, that's good. So for those of you that didn't go to the Fog, which is fine, it was an evening event. It was also post-camp for BAAYF 2011 for Hope, dedicated to sharing about that honest and sometimes very painful struggles we have as a believer. Doubt being one of them. Those that are questioning, those that feel anger towards God. And this idea, I have to take a little bit of time to explain what this is, just a minute. Was born out of Krissel's heart, and my heart, Preston's heart, and people from our church back at home in San Francisco. That this fog is this nasty thing that covers anything that is really you. And it's this blindness from truth and love that keeps us from this beautiful life that God has intended for us. And this fog is sin, and it's blindness. You know, like, you can't see beyond it. Sometimes when you're stuck in the fog, you're from the Bay Area. Bay Area. I'm gonna rep that when I can because I never get to do that. So you know, when I get to fog, being in the Bay Area. We won't check the airflow, but you know, there's light beyond that fog, and let me tell you, it's a trip getting there. And you're not always in the clear once you're free, you know, or once you feel that you're free. It always seems to move back after the sunniest days in SF. It always seems to cover. It's the party pooper, you know. Sometimes SF sucks, but I love my city. And I'm sharing today because I feel like that writing that got into my heart didn't end with last year. To be honest with you, a naive part of me felt like he was done because, you know, I got through a lot. For my standards back then. And I thought that would be my testimony and I was set for life. Why? Because I felt like I had something to share. I felt like it was meaningful. I felt like I paid my dues and that I'm doing something right with those experiences. So I'm good, I thought to myself, you know. But since the fog of last year, this is my fog. My mom's been fighting cancer for 7 years. And some of you maybe will relate with your own mom or dad or somebody else that you really love in your family. And I'll never forget that one night that changed my world 7 years ago. And in brief, I want to go in full, but Krissel's got an awesome story. My mom had an unexpected seizure. I was coming home. It was like 9 at night. I still remember the timestamp, but you don't forget those things. I came back from playing hockey and I was laughing again. So when I showed this other fog, people laugh because I just don't have the body of an athlete, which is fine. I think so. And her cries for help were the eeriest things I've ever heard. And it felt like, it sounded like she didn't have control of her own body. And you know, the scary part is this isn't a story or a movie. This is real life. This is right in front of my eyes. I was scared and my sister was still in the shower and she wasn't aware of what happened. I made my first 911 call that night. They're really nice on the other line, by the way. I had my first night, student of many nights, 7 years now, you know, 7 years past, of me questioning whether or not there was a God. Or why he would do something like this. She's been so faithful. Our family has been so faithful. Why do things happen like this? And so, we later find out that she has a cancerous brain tumor. And it's lodged, you know, brain tumor, it's never a good place. And she wasn't expected to live long, is what they told us. And I'll always remember that one day, the day after she checked into the hospital, when she cried in our arms, my sister and I, because she couldn't be there for us anymore, is what she told us. And my mom, the cornerstone of our home, my heart and mind, the most invincible human that I knew, was then being broken down into this feeble, crying mess. Not the superwoman that I used to know. You know, our parents stay strong for us, but when you see that happen, you look around and you say, you know, who's left to take care of the family, you know? That's the kind of fear I had. And, you know, she spent her whole life making sure that mine would be okay, and now hers would be taken away. Fast forward 7 years later to now, which I'll talk a little bit about later, is that she's gone through 4 surgeries since then, 2 chemo treatments, and 2 radiation treatments. And I can't say time flies, you know, in times like this. And each time hoping to buy more time to stay on Earth. That's kind of what cancer patients go through, you know. Does it get easier? Not at all. People say you get numb to it. Yeah, I don't think you're ever numb to it. And it just feels like this knife's getting pushed deeper and deeper every time. Because it meant that the treatment wasn't effective, and her chances of living were dropping as the days go by. Essentially, she's dying faster and faster. And you know, at first, to be square with you, which I hope to be for the rest of the night, I haven't been dishonest since it started, for the record. I was hesitant to share this story because I shared it before. And I was second guessing whether or not, these things were really about me. How has God moved me? Isn't this about your mom instead? Isn't it about my mom instead? Or was it just about the people that I loved? And Pastor Kayvon, really spoke to us. And especially in my heart. And sometimes God works through other people to move your heart. And I believe this on a personal level because if you were to look into my heart, you'd see my family. I surprise myself sometimes that I don't see myself. I'm kind of arrogant sometimes, but that's just the bad side of me. But they're my soft spot, And it's also become my fear because I'm so scared something bad's going to happen. And so this is why stuff that happens to my family is stuff that directly happens to me. And maybe some of you guys can relate to me, What kind of fears do you have? Do you fear loving others because you're so scared to get hurt in return? Has this happened to you before? Do you fear believing in God? Because what if everything you read about Him was true? Or is it your status at school that you value so much is the very thing that you're scared to lose? And so at this time I was reminded of this passage. It says, 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about this, that it should leave me. But He said, my grace is sufficient for you. For my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. At 2 Corinthians 12:8. And so the next bit is about my greatest weakness, the people that I love. And I absolutely hate it. Because it seems like it's such a selfless thing to do, right? To love other people. But it's also the thing that hurts me the most. Like I said before, it's actually quite a wonder why I care so deeply about people, because I'm such a sinful guy. I never used to give people the benefit of the doubt. I would judge you before you walked in the room. I heard his pants were bad, he's probably an idiot, Like that made any sense, right? But for me to ever understand God's character, which is the most important one of them all is love. The events in my life literally were probably the only ways that my heart could get softened. And it sucks to say, because I wish it didn't happen that way. Works differently for all of us, So this next part of my life, which is kind of now, can be summed up into a question. Will I ever catch a break? Ever? And these are the words that I kept saying to myself as I was waiting in the hospital in these past months. And it was June 18th of this year, a couple months ago. A day after my graduation. And I'm just spent from senior year of college. There's a lot that goes on. I took my mom to the doctors, and there's always a tense feeling in the room. Sometimes I don't even go with her to get her. It's called an MRI, and they scan to see if there's cancer that's come back. And every time she goes, and I go for a run, or I just try to turn my face away, and there's always this feeling of anxiousness. Is it that time again that it comes back? Because that means she's not going to live that long thereafter. She's in the office a long time, and I wait outside. It was suspicious. There's something not right, in the air. And because if things went well, the doctor would usually just tell you to go home. And during that time, my grandma calls me and tells me that my grandpa falls, and that he broke his kidney this time. And it's something serious, and he's 90. And this is as he's being rushed to the hospital. She's calling me from the ambulance. It's kind of loud, actually. Business as usual, I thought. They've been in and out of the hospital all my life. And the doctors opened the door at the office at UCSF. And she was laughing and smiling. I was relieved. And as I was pushing her on the wheelchair, she says, hey. I said, yeah, how'd it go, Because my cancer came back. This was June 18th of this year. This is the 5th time. And I wasn't sure if my heart could fall any lower than that. I saw 4 of my grandparents around, still fighting strong. The grandpa that fell is barely making it. my grandparents are in and out of the hospital week after week, month after month, year after year. There's just this feeling of restlessness, you know. I'm sick of it. I just want to get out of it. I just want to escape it somehow. And I love them so much because they've raised me since I was a kid, and I'm kind of sentimental. But not only that, but because I really love them. And again, that's my weakness, you know. And my grandpa at this point is trying to conquer some demons in his heart. Literally some demons, I believe. As he's lived the life of self-reliance and superstition. He told our family that one night he woke up and he imagined himself in a jail cell. There was a demon taunting him on the outside. And it was so strong, and I'm not lying, I wouldn't lie about this is ridiculous. That it was so strong that he felt like even calling upon God's name wasn't enough. And this stuff wears on you, you know, over and over. And he's in his darkest days, wrestling with God. And it hurts so much to see him change into a different person day by day. Sometimes he's okay, and other times he's got that cold stare. And that's not him. That's not the grandpa that I love. You know? I used to dance on his toes in the kitchen, you know, when he held my hands. I'm sure your parents did that with you, right? That's the kind of death I have. And to see that, and the night after that, he said, "You love me?" I said, "Yeah, of course." He said, "No, you don't." I said, "How can you say that?" He said, "You don't love me. You're not giving me eyes." And to hear stuff like that from somebody you love so deeply, it hurts so bad. My grandma visits him from sunlight to sundown. She's barely able to walk herself. She's got this limp that's it's coming in style actually, but it fits her. You know, she's kind of frail. Nonetheless, she's barely able to walk, and she makes it across town every day to see him. And they're emotionally drained. I'm emotionally drained. They're spiritually drained. It does drain me spiritually too. You know, you question everything at that point. And I'm drained. Why? Because my heart is where my family is at. And I'm not going to turn my face when they're walking through their darkest valley. That's something I can't do, and I'll never understand how some people could. On top of that, my mom broke her ankle. Since been in a wheelchair. It's probably been one of the most frustrating things for her and the rest of the family. It really tests your patience. If you thought teaching your parents how to text took a long time, try taking them to the shower with one leg. It takes an hour to do so. And I want to remind you, I'm telling you guys this stuff not because I'm complaining. This isn't Dr. Phil, you know. This is me kind of unloading the burden right here for all of us to look at. And I'm there to help her in and out of the shower every night with really no choice but to help. You know, I come home from school from UC Santa Cruz. I just graduated. To juggle cooking 3 meals a day for her, and cleaning the house and helping her take showers. All the things a mom would do to provide, you know. I'd take whatever ride I could get home. And it's been 6 months now. Things are kind of improving. Lastly for this, my relationship recently ended with somebody that I deeply cared about. And it goes deep because of so much I've learned. Part of seeing that fog for myself was to see the fog for her. And I don't know how many of you guys can relate to this, I'm sure you can, but when you love somebody so much, you can't help but to share that faith and hope that you have, right? And all they see is the fog, is the fog and darkness. And I learned through that relationship what it meant to love and not be loved back, just like what the pastor said. She came in and out of fog. She took steps forward and backwards with God. We cried together. We laughed together. We learned about pain and true happiness together. There were real struggles, you know, that were so meaningful that has shaped me to who I am today. It was so deep, like I said, it wasn't even about me or the relationship anymore. It it hurt so bad not to see her come to faith when I was there, in that time frame. You know, it's a fight that's real and difficult, and it's still a fight. And right here and right now in my life, I feel like I can't catch a break. And it sucks. You know, I've been faithful. I've said to myself, what more do you want from me, God? I think I always remember those nights, actually. In that moment before you fall asleep, when your mind just wanders. And instead of, you know, counting sheep, I would just be angry at God. It was a real kind of anger, you know. And I actually believed for a little bit that things would be easier if you took my life, rather than taking the people that I love the most away from me. And I'd wake up at odd hours in the night, night after night. I look in the mirror. Sometimes I wouldn't even recognize myself because of that drain. You know, some of you might know this feeling. I'm sure for a lot of you guys, you couldn't fall asleep your first night, right? It's kind of like that at times 7 years. It just kind of sucks. The point I want to make here is that, and I think this is it. All the stuff that I'm going through, restlessness, one after another, I can't catch a break. God, do you even love me? Are you even there? Is that I'm actually here to tell you that sometimes things don't get better. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. For me, it seems like it's not getting better. And I can't stand up here and tell you that things will. A good friend of mine, Erin, you guys know her, she's great. Small girl, you know. Always got that beanie on. We played worship together, and she tells me to take a look at this verse as I'm telling her these things on Facebook chat. And I'm just on my email, and you hear that annoying little Facebook chat, that little thing? I can't figure out how to turn it off even when I go to the settings. And she does this thing where she says, hi. It's just a period. And you know what that means, right? I mean, at this age, it's sassy. Why are you putting the period there, right? You know, it's a small thing. This is a side note. I'm just, for the record, that's sassy. And she's a little sassy. And I didn't get why she would message me all of a sudden. But she does this thing where she goes, how are you doing? So I'm like, well, you wouldn't ask me if you didn't care, right? So I tell her these things. And she says, wait. I don't know too much about this. It's this book called Lamentations. But I just went over the life of Jeremiah, and he has like the worst life ever. And I read into it, and this Jeremiah guy, prophet, he was known as a weeping prophet. And weeping isn't just crying, it's like, it's the same feelings. God, do you love me? Where are you? What are you doing to me? I'm hurting, are you even there? And he was watching his world and the people he loved and cared about the most crumble before his eyes. God told him to go save them and help them. But he also said, nothing you do is going to help. Things wouldn't get better. And I want to read this. This is bringing the word to life. This is when I felt a direct connection. To be honest with you, I actually don't open the Bible that much when I'm, you know, going through these things as much as I should. But here it is, Lamentations 3. And to lament means to mourn. It's not just crying, it's this deep feeling of sadness that I can't communicate right now. And he says, I am the man who has seen affliction by the rod of his wrath. He has driven me away and made me walk in darkness rather than light. Indeed, he has turned his hand against me again and again all day long. How more could I have agreed with this? He has made my skin and my flesh grow old, and he has broken my bones. He has besieged me and surrounded me with bitterness and hardship. He has made me dwell in darkness like those long dead. He has walled me in so I cannot escape. He has weighed me down with chains. Even when I call out or cry for help, he shuts down my prayer. He has barred my way with blocks of stone. He has made my paths crooked. And sometimes life does feel like that. I there's a God that's just evil and out to get you. But the twist for me here was how his heart reacted to this. He goes on to say in verse 3:19, I remember my affliction and my wandering, the bitterness and the gall. I will remember them, and my soul is downcast within me. Yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. Because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed, for his compassions never fail. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. I say to myself, the Lord is my portion, therefore I will wait for him. The Lord is good to those who have hope, whose hope is in him, to the one who seeks him. For somebody to go through something like this, that I found parallels, changed my thinking completely because of this one verse, because Aaron decided to say hi with a period at the end, that one night. And my bottom line is, I feel this eagerness to share is, there's a lot of hurt in this room that feels like it's never ending and it's restless. And I'm going through it right there with you. And I feel like there's no out. But to persevere in faith and hope by learning God's character and heart through experiences like this. I wasn't able to have faith because I didn't understand his character. I was sharing my own faith, but I didn't know my own God, let alone his heart. And the world around us, it may not get better. In fact, it doesn't seem like it. It's a really bad world out there. It's not what God intended. But that's the way it is. What happens when sin enters. But what does change are our hearts. If we align our hearts to God, to a God that doesn't change, I'm not scared of what lies ahead. And I look to 1 Corinthians, actually, every morning as my guiding light to remind myself of God's heart. Because sometimes when you have those nights and those days when you think God's out to get you, I've simply forgotten who God is. And I don't know if you've heard that a million times, but it means so much more to me now in a different light. In 1 Corinthians 13, 4-7. Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It is not rude, it is not self-seeking, it is not easily angered, it keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. That's what it is. It's the most important. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, and always perseveres. 1 Corinthians 13. I've failed so many times in my life, yet he still intercedes. You know, when we allow him to enter our hearts, he loves us so much. You know? And I remind myself of this every morning by saying his heart protects, his heart trusts, his heart hopes, and his heart perseveres. And the theme of this camp, you know, for this year couldn't have come at a better time. Understand his love really before we understand faith and hope, because we have faith and we have hope because we trust in his heart. And I tell these things to Krissel. She's one of my best friends, and she says, you know, as hopeless as life seems one after another. When I go home, by the way, you know, this is an escape for me for 5 days. I go right back into the fire. My grandpa's getting worse. My mom may or may not have a surgery in about a week. My heart's still broken, you know, all these things. I wake up every morning with hope. And she says, Krissel says, you know, gold needs to be heated up to temperatures that are scorching hot. That refine it through the grit that it came in. I think when you dig up gold, it's just like rocks. I don't know, I'm not a geologist, but from what I understand, it was really beautiful actually when she said it. I know. Let's try that again. these hardships that you guys face, when it feels like there's no end, that's God shaping you. He's allowing these things to happen, and you can be angry as much as you want at Him. But it's because He has plans so much bigger through all this. I'm not lying. I'm a cynical guy. I wouldn't be saying this stuff if I didn't mean it. Open your hearts. And likewise, like the trials we face today and tomorrow, are all God's way of building us as men and women into His face. It's not going to be easy. That's one thing I have to emphasize. That's just one thing I feel in my heart that I have to emphasize, is that the days ahead are not going to get easy. Even when our hearts are broken, you know. But imagine the love and the understanding we're able to share with people that are in similar situations. You bring them right out of that valley. Not by you, but by God, because you come to understand who He is. So don't let the trials happen in vain. Everything you're going through, big or small, I know they mean a lot. That's why it bothers you day to day, night and night, and you can't fall asleep. It would be a waste if you let it happen in vain. And what's the alternative? You have everything to lose, but everything to gain. And so, you know, I want to end by saying this. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you a future. And that's where I'm at. And thank you guys for listening to when we share about that. Whatever you guys are going through, you know, I'm right there with you. I'm not out of the dark either, so. That's all I have for today. And Krissel.
Hello? They told me to tell the joke, so I'll just tell one that Emmeline told me today. And one of the bears, she's been telling a lot of bear jokes. I want to tell you guys a bear joke. What do you guys, if you guys know it, don't say anything. Don't make me mad. What do you call a bear that is not drunk? Did someone say a gummy bear? It's called a soul bear. I'm just trying to kill time until they're setting up. I'll be here all week if you want to hear more.
Sign up open mic.
Or, well, I guess she's ready, so it's too late. Time's over. Bye.
Oh, it is working. I'm here to save you from the bear jokes. So, I'm glad to be here. It really is a blessing, a wonderful opportunity to be here and speak to you guys. And honestly, I kind of don't know why. But why don't we just go ahead and get into it? So, God's blessed me by placing me into a Christian family. But I think the blessing even started even before I was born. My parents have been trying to have kids for 9 years before I was even married. My mom would have miscarriages over and over and over again before she had me. And so when I was born, my parents were overjoyed and they were so happy to have me. But anyways, going back. So I was born to a Christian family. And you know, everyone says that in the beginning of their testimonies. I was born to a Christian family. I went to church every Sunday. I went to Sunday school every Sunday. And on top of that, I went to Christian school for 12 years. And so, you can believe me when I say that, like, I was immersed into this wonderful Christian life. But that didn't even really start until I was around 6 years old when I actually met with Christ. You see, my parents weren't around all the time because, well, coming to America from the Philippines, they had to work to have a better life for me than they had. And so my Lola came over, and Lola, if you guys don't know, it's what we call our grandmas, and Lola is her grandpa. And so she was the one who took care of me, and she was the one who mostly raised me. When I was 6 years old, my grandma went to the hospital. I was coming home from school one day, and we were running and laughing, and all of a sudden she just stops. And I looked at her and I was like, whoa, like, what's going on? Like, what's wrong? And she's like, I can't run anymore. And I was like, okay, like, we'll just walk home. And so we walked home, and all of a sudden things started to get serious. I was really, really young at the time. I had no idea what was going on. Like, my mom is panicking. My dad is being himself and like trying to keep his cool, but instead shows anger because that's how we react in these kinds of situations. And so we ended up going to the hospital, and I find out that she has something wrong with her heart, and because of that, because of the clogged arteries, she has to have a triple bypass. And she was really old, and they said that they couldn't guarantee that she would be okay because of the fact that she was so old and that she had so much arguing, that she was hurt so much. And so I remember her laying in bed, and I was sitting there, and my dad had to pull me out, and he said, you know, Lola might not make it. And I looked at him and I said, wait, what? And he goes, well, Krissel, there's this thing that happens to people when their bodies just stop and they just can't be around you anymore. And like, of course, like when you're 6 years old, you don't really have a good grasp and a good concept of death. But he tried to explain as best as he could, and here I was thinking, oh my goodness, I'm never gonna see her again. Oh my goodness, what am I gonna do? And here he goes, and he takes this 6-year-old girl and he brings her to the cafeteria, and we sit and we try to eat dinner. But I'm silent, and he tells me, you know, you shouldn't be afraid of death. I said, why not? And he looks at me and he says, because Lola has accepted Jesus Christ. And I was like, oh really? Me too. And he goes, you have? And I was like, yeah, I have. I went to Sunday school every day, and I talked about Jesus every day, and because of that, all of a sudden, I'm a Christian too, right? And he goes, no, that ain't it. You gotta realize that, well, you have to accept Jesus Christ before you can do that. And he begins to break out the salt and the pepper and the hot sauce, and he starts showing me, this is us, and this is God, and because of sin, there's this void, and because of this void, Jesus Christ came, and he filled in this, and he died, and he chose blood, and I was like, wow, okay. I don't have to worry about death anymore, and I don't have to worry about not seeing Lola ever again, and okay. And I was like, okay, Dad, I want to accept Christ. I really, really want to accept Christ. And he was like, okay. I said, okay. And so I accepted Christ that night. And so eventually I went to this one Christian school, and it was good. It was great. And I remember in kindergarten, or like through first grade and through third grade, they give you these awards. And then there's like the things that the teacher really likes about you. So people will get like, oh, you're really nice. No, you're really smart. No, you're really good at sports. But because I went to a Christian school, they gave me this award for having Christ-like character. And because of that, I was like, oh, like I really want to have Christ-like character all the time. And so I continued, and in Sunday school, I wanted to be active, and so I was. But for some reason, as time went on, I found myself doing it to act a part. I started doing it because I wanted to convey this person that people said I was and people saw me as. But that wasn't really who I was. It was like, I would tell myself I'm here, but really, I'm right here. And so as I went into like 6th and 7th grade, being in a small school was really hard because like we had a lot of bullies. And it was really hard for me because, well, I wasn't that cute. And so because of that, like, I often had to deal with people being really, really mean. And a lot of it had to do with just the fact that it was a small school and things got around really fast. But also, my dad is really, really a wonderful man, a great and loving man. But at the time, I didn't really understand that because of how much separation he put in between me and him. He was really angry, and he would always discourage me from when I was trying to do things, and I always felt like I wasn't good enough. And because of that, like I always had to seek after some sort of male affirmation, and that really got to me because I was just constantly looking for someone to love me in the way that I wanted my dad to love me. Please, Dad, just love me. Just tell me you love me. Can can you please hug me? Can you please just do what other dads are supposed to do? But he doesn't. And because of that, I was often angry with him. And I would search and seek for these feelings and these affirmations and the security and the protection and all these things from other men. And that put me into a really compromising position. It led me to be in a place where I wouldn't be able to be, it was just like, I met someone and he didn't understand the word no. And it's hard. And it was hard. And I was ashamed. And I was so angry. And I said, God, you're supposed to be real and you're supposed to be so much more and you're supposed to promise me that you love me. But why would you do that to me? Sorry. But after that, I promised myself I would never tell anyone. Never. I was so ashamed. I was so angry. My parents worked so hard just so that they could put me into a wonderful place, but you know, I wasn't where I was. And so I would constantly have nightmares, and I would feel so alone and so depressed. And to the point where my mom and I were, my dad and I were, I just had a terrible relationship with my parents. I couldn't open up to anyone, I couldn't trust anyone, I couldn't even find it within myself to love other people because of the fact that I just hated myself so much. And so I started to cut, and I started to do it because I just couldn't feel anymore, and I was just like, I'm still trying to be this Christian, I'm still trying to be this person, I'm still trying to be everything that you ever wanted me to be, but yet this is what it is. And I was like, God, can't you see that? Can't you see that I'm trying to be loving, and I'm trying to be encouraging, and I'm trying to do all these things for you, and yet you can't rescue me from this? And I became depressed, and I was doing really bad in school. It was really bad. I had a lot of people discouraging me along the way, people saying, if you miss another day of school, we're going to have you repeat the entire grade, you do this, and this, and I was just like, where is this love? Even in this Christian school, where is it? And so, much like Alvin, my mom is always constantly in the hospital. And if that wasn't enough, like I always had to lay there next to my mom in her hospital bed or my lower hospital bed because there were mental homes where she went to, and I was just like, where are you? Where are you? And if you were so good, God, then why are you letting me suffer? And why can't you just let me die so I don't have to deal with this ever again? Why can't I just be with you and I don't have to deal with this ever again? But there was nothing. And I felt there was nothing. And I was hurting, and I was broken, and I had no one to tell these things to. Because I was so hurt, and I was so ashamed of who I was. And then I went to high school. I went to a new school, and I was still dealing with all the hurt and all the issues. And I was just such a mess. And I walked in looking for something. And I was like, okay, new environment, new start. Let's try to get through this, and you know, whatever happens, happens. And so, freshman year was okay, it was on right by, and then sophomore year came, and we have this thing called winter retreat. And winter retreat is very much like BAAYF, but it's up in the snow, and it's really cold, and we're all stuck inside a thing that smells like mildew, and like, it's kind of gross, but it's kind of like homey after a while. I don't know. But so anyways, one night we were having like this really harmless praise night, and like we were being prayed over, and it just so happens that the theme for that winter retreat was love. And I remember hearing all these stories about how this man experienced God's love and how wonderful and how amazing it was. And here I was preaching the same thing, but not feeling it at all. And so that one night he was just letting the music play, and I really connected with God through music. And so like, I remember hearing All I Need Is You, and I was like, goodness, like, all I do need is you. All this suffering, all this pain, you know, if you can take it away, if you can be the one to heal me of it, if you can be the one to just be the love that I needed all this time. Okay. And I remember just being completely overwhelmed in that moment, and just crying, and just feeling so much more than I've ever felt in my entire life. And at that point, like before that, I could hardly ever cry because of the fact that I never felt. But I was just crying. And I knew from there, like, even when I was hurting, and even when I was crying, even when I was cutting, even when I was angry with God, that He was there. So I started to seek and chase after God. And so I came to BAAYF in 2010, and there I met my cabin. But it was just what I needed, because I had so many people who really genuinely cared and loved me. And it just reminded me, you know, like, in this fellowship, like, of how God's love is too. That it is there, and that it is so wonderful. And so I kept seeking, and eventually I came to SFCAC. Actually, that was a little fun. So I went to SFCAC, and then I met my best friend, which is Alvin, and we talked. And I remember, like, our first conversation was going to Little Luca's. And if you guys have never been to Little Luca's, the sandwiches are like this big, and they're all like really good, and then they have like this really good sauce, and it's really nice. And like me and Alvin were going in, and I was like, okay, do you want to share a sandwich? And he was like, yeah, that sounds great. And then 10 minutes later, he was like, actually, I don't want to share a sandwich with you. And I said, oh, okay, that's fine. And he really thought that I was just trying to be cheap, but I was really just trying to share because it's huge. But like, he likes that. And so like, that's where we met, and that's where our journey started, and that's definitely where we came together and we started talking about the fog, because we started to relate with each other on what we've been struggling with. He was having like a lot of struggles with his mom and his grandpa and all these things, and I definitely related because of my mom and my grandma, and so we were definitely on the same page. And from there, I met my family. I gotta say, like, I've never been so close to people in my entire life, and like, God really just opened the doors for that for me, and I was just like, wow, okay, so we're getting somewhere. I was just like, wow, it was just really crazy, and I just couldn't, even now I just can't even put into words how grateful and how thankful I am for that. But after that, it just kept coming. You know, this love, even through my brokenness, this love that would just come, and I would just be able to start to forgive those who hurt me in the past for small things, and eventually started to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And until this day, like, I have a hard time really forgiving my parents and forgiving him and forgiving all the people who have hurt me in the past, and all the people who said all those mean things, and all the people who went out of their way to make sure that everything wasn't that great for me. But I really learned that the love of God really surpasses all things. And that no matter what I say, and no matter what I do, no matter what I've been through, no matter what I hide, no matter what I show, that God's love is just so immense. That it is so much more for me. That He sent His only Son to die for me. That everything else just started to melt away. And I just really want to share this passage with you. So if you guys want to open your Bibles, it's in Romans 8. And it's verses 31 through 39. Or is it 39? 39. So this verse says, "What then shall we say to these things? If God is for us, then who can be against us? He did not spare His own Son, but gave Him up for us all. How will He not also with Him graciously give us all things? Who shall bring any charge against God's elect. It is God who justifies. Who is to condemn? Christ Jesus is the one who died, and more than that, who was raised, who is at the right hand of God, who indeed is interceding for us. Who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or danger or sword? As it is written, for your sake we are being killed as all the day long. We are regarded as sheep to be slaughtered. No, in all these things we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. For I am sure that neither death nor life, nor angels nor rulers, nor things present nor things to come, nor powers, nor height nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God in Christ Jesus our Lord.
Praise the Lord.
And I want you guys to know that if you're struggling with something, if you're dealing with something, and if you're hurting, if you feel ashamed, if you feel like you have to hide things, if you feel that anything that you do will prevent God from loving you more than he does, no. Because nothing will ever separate you from the love of God. Just in the same way that none of these things have separated me from the love of God. And I am a living testament of that. And I am praying and I ask that whatever it may be, that you will be free from that.